All right, let's send off that last email and be back together as a group, coming down the home stretch.
She's back here now, and so last month, but it's all the same. She was out there for like years.
And she was on,
Food service.
yeah, that's why, they don't.
Oh, no, I knew, you know, she could make it. Oh, no.
That's
a
video.
You're far from that.
Yeah.
Last topic of the day, and such an important one, Q&A. Q&A is not your closing. Oftentimes people say, any questions? No? Okay. Run for the door and wipe their brow that there were no questions. Start looking at Q&A as an extension of your interactive conversation that you have been working so hard with all these other skills to create. Handled really effectively, Q&A poses more opportunity to be influential. You now have the attention and interaction of your group. You get their perspective, hear what their concerns are, their questions are. Lots of conversation to be had as long as you handle it well. What have you seen others do in Q&A that has been ineffective?
We'll take that one back to the team.
We'll take
And not
that one back to
answer.
the team.
Like,
In
they
other
don't even
words,
say anything about it. It's like, did you even write that down? They're just like, okay, we'll take that one back. Like,
are you saying the
that answer.
the speaker says, I'll take that one back to the team, meaning I don't know and I don't know how to answer, or the listener says, thanks for the info, I'll take it back to the team?
No, like, so I'm asking you a question on a call. Like,
You're
hey
the
Sarah,
speaker.
do you know if we have this available? You're the leader and you say, I'll take that back to the team.
In
That's
other
what I
words,
answer.
It shouldn't be
I have
said.
no idea.
Like, what do you want us to say?
Well, at least say, I'm not sure, I do know this, let me follow up and I will get back to you by Wednesday.
Nicely
Something
done,
that's
you have a good
so
idea.
non-descriptive. Or
Yes.
even like, yep, let me write that down, is more.
We'll take this one back to the team, sounds like a blow off.
Yeah. I'll
What
take
else,
that.
what else have you seen that's ineffective?
Well, I don't know,
all
maybe
about
it's
that,
rude
right?
for me to think that that's rude, but they don't even say anything.
Well, what this is perspective. Something, it brings up a great point, Kiera. Something that seems perfectly okay with good intention, it gives you perspective on how it can be perceived that you didn't know. That's golden information. It doesn't, no judgment, that doesn't make it bad, it's just a learning experience of how that can come across that you weren't aware. What else drives you nuts in Q&A? What have you seen people do that doesn't work for
I
you?
was just gonna say too about that, like, let me take it back to the team does not provide ownership to you, you're presenting,
Mhm.
versus like, I was taught just to say, let me get back to you on that. Like, I'm taking ownership, I understand, I don't know, and I don't have to say, I don't know, but I will get back to you.
Yeah, or saying that you're gonna look into it and respond
Yeah.
to me,
Mhm.
then I think, okay, if I don't hear back, I could at least
You
ask
know where to
Lindsay,
go
did you have a chance?
That's right.
I'm just curious, do you think by a person saying, let me get back to you, is that appropriate, or do you still think that that's kind
Yeah,
of
cause what, like you said,
you take ownership?
and if I don't hear from you, I would feel comfortable checking in with you, cause you're not
Maybe we
so
get back.
closed off
Right.
about it.
There is a way to be honest and not know. You can do both. How you present that, the words you use to say I don't know, all can change how you come across. I like to do something like this. You just asked me a question about how our social media campaign is going to incorporate into the Stacy Humke Inc. offerings. Stacy has a great social media contact. I know she knows that answer. I'll follow up with her after this meeting and get you your answer by Friday. Simple enough. I didn't know. But I didn't have to say that. I simply told her I had a resource, promised I would follow up. What other kind of things don't work for you?
As a fellow listener, I hate when Q&A turns into just repeating stuff that we've already discussed because people weren't listening. So if there's a way for the leader to kind of like nip it in the butt right away and be like, we discussed that on slide 7, and I'll encourage you to look back there rather than like continuing to answer
Reiterating the
everybody's
entire
question.
conversation. Mhm. What about what happens? Have you seen things that happen physically with someone that are ineffective or do them a disservice during Q&A?
The presenter or
The speaker.
Oh.
I feel like they can become more casual as soon as it's
Q&A, it's
Oh,
almost
the
like,
okay, we're done.
presentation hat goes
Okay.
off and now they
yeah.
take a seat, kick back, feet up on the table, right? Mhm. Throw me a question about our content, anyone. Toss me a question and then coach me.
Why is eye connection, why do you think it's the most important?
Well, basically, eye connection is one of the most important skills because if you can't connect with someone's eyes, then you aren't going to establish any sort of trust with them. So eye connection is clearly going to be important because if you can't
can't even
establish
do
trust with your listener,
I
the
don't want
chances
to
of
go in.
influencing them are going to be really low.
Is that what we
Any
do?
other questions?
Are you scared of us?
I was saying, are you scared? You're backing
Yeah, are you
away.
scared?
Okay,
To bite
there we
you.
go. Coach me. Tell me what you saw. Is backing
Sweaty
up. What
palms.
else? Sweaty palms. What happened?
You're fidgety.
Fidgety?
Not
I
great,
think
not
that was-
holding eye.
It wasn't
contact.
like-
you weren't doing eye contact.
I wasn't practicing eye
I think it was
connection when I was
once-
talking
It
about
wasn't
how
like
important.
concise, like how you are when you present, you know?
And what went away that made me less
Your
concise?
confidence. Your
Eye
mouth.
contact,
Pausing, eye
pausing.
connection, pausing. I was showing you that I was feeling nervous, maybe even a bit defensive. Where did I go?
Backwards.
That backwards walk is one of the key giveaways. I'm uncomfortable with answering this question. Sometimes you can even maintain your composure with your hands. Take 2 steps back. It says, I need a physical boundary, I don't know the answer. Now let's try that again. Same question, watch the difference.
Why do you think eye connection is the most important?
Eye connection is one of the key delivery skills, the only one that will establish trust with your listener. When you establish trust, your opportunities to influence go sky high. Eye connection shows your listener that you are completely engaged, hoping they get out of the interaction what you want them to. What was different?
Everything we've
What
learned
did you
in the
see
last
that I
2
did?
days.
Let's peel it apart a bit. What did you see that I did that made it look different?
Gestures, you had your
Pauses.
pauses, no filler words, eye connection.
You're like rooted to your spot.
Right. All of those skills that we taught earlier really matter. Maintaining the eye connection, transferring that eye connection around the room, keeping it random,
Yeah, you started with me.
Like,
but then
start with
you
the
went
person
to-
that asks
Yeah.
and then flow.
and shared to all. Let's look at some best practices for eye connection, for Q&A. We won't go back to eye connection.
Back to day one.
You pegged it. I stayed open to everyone and I answered to all. Starting with Claire, a sentence or two, connecting with her, body stays open to the entire group as I move on and share with all the different people in the group. Where did I land? Where did I end?
Back at Claire.
Back at Claire. I was done with my words, but I checked back in with Claire for some nonverbal closure. That eliminates the need for, did that answer your question? That can open up the potential for leaving people to wonder if you had confidence in your answer. Just check in nonverbally, head nod, you've gotten the closure you need. Staying open also means keeping the conversation open by the way you open it up for Q&A. Any questions? What are you going to respond?
Nope, good.
I get 10 extra minutes.
Right? You have to leave early because I can say no. Instead, what questions do you have? Have you heard Mary Beth and I using that throughout the whole 2 days and in the coaching room? What questions do you have? Questions around eye connection. Open-ended. They can even be really, really specific. Claire, how do you feel that you are going to use this day one outside of these 2 doors? Now I've got a specific open question for her that she has to answer. Stay open. That also means what you do with your body. Now if Claire asked me that question and I responded this way, eye connection is really critical to establishing trust with your listener. What just happened to Tony?
He's checked out.
You're out.
Yeah, I've given him no attention, and now this is just going to become a one-on-one conversation between you and I. When that happens, not only have I closed myself off to Tony, I've isolated the rest of the group. That's why we answer to all. Chances are, everyone in here is interested in that answer. Show them that you're going to include them and acknowledge them in your response. Be brief. This gets right back to everything we've been talking about the last 2 days. Less is more. The fewer words, the better. Derek, ask me about my time with Stacy Hunke. How long?
Like, how long have you been there? How long have you been with Stacy Hunke?
I've been with Stacy Hunke in different realms for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I spent some time with PESI. It was an educational company that created medical education training programs for physicians. Prior to that, I was with Wyeth Pharmaceuticals for about 8 years. The answer is 3.5 years. If that's the answer, just, that's okay. You don't need to give the whole resume. You don't need the
I feel like I would do
history.
that.
You don't need to relive your entire talk. If the answer is a short one, just give a short answer. If it requires more explanation, so be it, answer to all. What happens when, how do you handle it? Have you ever had someone roll 3 questions into one big question?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
Like clarify, like, so you're wanting to know this, and like list them off, you're ridiculous, you want 3 answers, okay?
Mhm.
Make 'em do it.
Whose job is it to remember, just say there's 3, whose job is it to remember the second 2? The question asker, the questioner. It is not your job to remember all 3 and include them in your response. Let's try this. Can someone make one of those up on the fly for me?
What's your favorite holiday? Why is that your favorite holiday? What do you do on that holiday?
Casey, I heard you ask what my favorite holiday is.
Yeah.
Save those other 2 questions for me. Let me take that one first. My favorite holiday is Christmas. What is magical about Christmas is watching my kids come down the steps in the morning and open those presents. I love the tradition behind the holiday. I love the winter season, love seeing my family. What were the other 2?
I think you got the second one, it was why is it your favorite holiday? And I think you got what do you do on it, so thanks.
There you go. One of 2 things is going to happen.
You forget, I was
That's
like,
right.
You're like,
You're exactly right. One of 2 things is going to happen with those multi-questions. You take the first one, tell them you'll be back for the other 2. They will either have gotten your full response in your initial response, or they will forget the other 2. And then it's up to them. That's okay. Yeah, it's fine. Let them sit on it. And if they say, I'm sorry, I forgot. When you check in for the other 2, no problem. If it comes back to you, let me know. I'm happy to answer your questions. Now here's the golden opportunity in that situation. What if 1 or 2 of those questions is really challenging and touchy, and the main one is easy? There's an easy one tied in with a couple tough ones. Which one do you take first?
Easy
The
one.
easy one.
Don't forget.
Yes, take the easy question first, the one you can have the most confidence in and answer with the most articulation. Chances are, when you check in for the other 2, you will either have satisfied them with your initial response, or they will have forgotten. And it opens up an opportunity for follow-up later if they remember. Isn't that a great trick? The last item up there is that honesty. We've already addressed it. Just be honest. If you don't know, that's okay. Find a really articulate way to take that I don't know and turn it into I've got resources. There's always a place to find the answer. Don't even have to start out the gate with, look at, freeze frame. Oh, I don't know. All of a sudden, they get the impression that your confidence went down. Maintain your composure. You're unflappable. Just say, my colleague, Stacy, has phenomenal experience in social media. I'm going to follow up with her after and provide you to answer that question by Friday. Now, it goes from I don't know and I'm unsure to I've got the resource for your answer. I'll make sure you get it. Feel the difference? What does being defensive look like and sound like? How can you tell if I'm defensive, Tony?
Facial expression, body language.
tone, facial expressions, body language. What often happens with our body when we start feeling defensive? Or back up, fidget. All of those things I did at the beginning when I was feeling uncomfortable. When we're defensive, and the questions start to get a bit challenging, tenfold. All of those things amplify. You might feel your face get red, a lump in your throat, then close up, walk backwards. We also answer very quickly. When we're feeling defensive, we answer really fast. It's like a fire back. When you're starting to feel that the pressure's on and things are turning challenging, pause. Here is your opportunity to shine. Here's what I love about challenging questions. So many people dread them. Now, let's think about this. Peel the situation apart. It's the end of the day or the end of the talk. People are getting anxious to head out, right? Somebody in the group fires you a really challenging question. The person who was packing their bag or sending off that quick text, whatever, what do they all of a sudden do? Boom! They want to see how you're going to handle this. It's an attention grabber. What a great opportunity for you. Thank you to the challenger for re-engaging everyone back to me when I'm struggling for attention. Now watch me shine on how I handle it in an unflappable way. All of these skills are how you handle it. Avoid saying good question. Why?
Because then what are the other ones bad?
Why? Yes, you run a risk
It kind of makes you look like you don't know what you're talking, like,
Oh,
it's almost a good question, like you're unsure of the answer you're about to give, because you think it's like
A really
a
good
question
question.
you may not know
Your
how to
credibility.
answer. Yeah, a good question.
It's a filler too.
Good question, I'm stalling as I think of my answer.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a stall
Hope it's a
tactic.
good one.
Yes. Good question runs two risks. One, to be perceived as a stall tactic, which now you've taken a hit on your credibility. Two, you run the risk of offending your listeners. Good question, Claire. I'm so glad you asked that, Hannah. Great point, really valid point, Casey. Good, I'm really glad you brought that up. And I just say nothing to Katie. I just answered the question.
Dumb question.
Right?
I don't like
You
that.
run the risk of someone questioning that. Most people are gonna go with the flow, but do you want to risk that, particularly if you forgot to say it to your decision maker? Just nix it. Nix it altogether. If you stay open during your answer, include everyone in your answer, stay composed, check back in for closure. All of those behaviors validate that was a good question. Show them instead of telling them. Now, if things are starting to get challenging, we talked about ending your eye on your questioner for some nonverbal closure. When you're feeling the heat turn up in the question, that's where you land your eyes elsewhere. That's the difference in handling a challenging question. Why would you want to do that?
Less combative to stare down a challenging question, and with that person, it gets you into more neutral territory, talking to other eyes.
Right, you land in neutral territory. If Claire just asked me a really challenging question, was really pushing my buttons, I started with her, I moved on, I answered to all, and I land back on her, what am I inviting her to do?
So ask you another.
Fire me another one. Now, in some scenarios, you may need to check back in. If that's your decision maker, if it's really critical that you check back in for some closure, feel free. Just be prepared for another challenging question. Usually you'll get another. If you land elsewhere, I decided I'm gonna start with Claire's challenging question, Tony, but I'm gonna land on you and have my closure here. Most of the time, that will diffuse the situation. When you feel that heat, end elsewhere. Another stall tactic. Claire, you asked me why eye connection is so important. What Claire was asking about eye connection, why it's such a critical skill. Eye connection is so critical because, do you hear that?
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great, right?
That was like 10 minutes to think.
It's another stall tactic. Now, there are times where repeating the question is necessary. When you have a really large group and you genuinely don't know that people way back could hear it, it's necessary to repeat it. If you're just using it as a stall tactic, nix it and just pause. The pause will come across so much cleaner and with so much more confidence. Your listener's onto you. If you start repeating it and then re-repeating it in the beginning of your answer, they will know right off the bat that you're buying time. It's better to just pause or be honest and resourceful, telling them that you'll follow up with them. When things get really, really heated, have you ever been in a situation where you really could feel someone pushing you? There's a method in how we handle that. It's called ARC. Let's talk about that. When someone's really pushing you or giving you a really strong objection, what often are they seeking? Acknowledgement. Usually there is something lying behind the real question that is of concern. Find out what that is. Read it, really analyze it on the fly and think, what are they really asking here? And give it some acknowledgement. After you acknowledge, then you can generate your response, and you can respond. Key piece of this ARC method, the most important part, connect to benefits. Find their acknowledgement that they need, give your response, always connect it back to benefits for the listener. Let's break this down. Is there a common objection that you all hear in your interactions with your buyers?
Competitive, maybe like a competitive,
Why you?
competitive pricing or something, like, sorry, they're just like a lower price kind of thing.
Or why didn't
Pricing.
we come with this innovation a year ago? Or why are you coming out with this 3 months from now? I should have been on it this year ago. Bonnie came a year ago and told us their 5-year innovation.
Which one of those can we relate to the most as a group? All right, let's take the cost one. Let's take that cost one. When the objection is over price, what's the real issue?
Margin.
What might they not understand?
Always
The
margin.
value that they're getting.
The value. Usually the question lies in not understanding the true value. So how can we acknowledge price? What would be a good acknowledgement over this objection?
Maybe something like acknowledging that the price is higher, but the value you're getting is greater.
Let's spell that out, let's break it down. Let's just develop our acknowledgement. Someone says, oh, that is sky high, I was not anticipating that price, it's too high. How can you acknowledge that?
Yes, we know this is higher than what you've seen in the past.
Okay, yeah, it's higher than what you've seen in the past, you're right. Or, price and budget are always an issue, every organization we interact with. Just acknowledge it, it's a big deal, it matters. Now let's generate a response.
Go to the value.
Go to let's go to it.
The value we're offering is much greater than in the past, for the quantity, I guess.
Nice. The value that you're realizing through this higher price is greater than what we were able to offer in the past. If you try this out, you will, let's hear some benefits. What's in it for them?
Your customers will appreciate the greater value.
Right, your customers will appreciate the richer value. What else?
You'll have a higher dollar ring.
Higher
Dollar ring.
dollar ring.
Yeah.
You'll have a higher dollar ring. Any others? Are those the two key?
If your consumers see so much value in it, they may purchase it more often.
create repeat buyers. There you go. There's how to handle an objection. When things start getting push and pull, you can feel, there's a feeling you get when someone, that the tone comes out, and someone's really going to challenge you, go to ARC. ARC is only for the challenging question. Only for the challenging question. And with that response then, Claire gave me the challenging question, I do ARC, I'm answering to all, where do I land? Elsewhere. Anywhere but Claire. Now,
Sarah,
what?
I have a quick question.
Let's,
about this.
yes, Kaya.
Sorry. With that, if they ask a question that, based on how they phrase it and what they're actually asking, you know that's not really their concern. If really they're saying that cost isn't right, or that price isn't right, and you really know they're saying, I can't protect my margin at that, do you just ask, okay, what's driving that concern? When you already know, I know you're not truly asking me about price. I know what you're really concerned about is margin, based on our history.
Put it in your acknowledgement.
Do you just say,
You can say
I understand
price.
that's gonna compress margin?
Absolutely, you
Yeah.
can say, I understand that the price seems high and that there's always a concern of a compressed margin.
Okay,
Let's talk about the value it brings.
okay.
Think about this technique. What often follows an acknowledgement? I acknowledge this price is higher than what you're used to seeing.
But, which negates exactly what you just acknowledged.
Anything else? Prettier version of but. But, however, just gave them this great acknowledgement that opens up and acknowledges what they're feeling and followed it up with a
But it
snap.
doesn't matter.
But it really doesn't matter. I still want to influence you. Still want you to make this choice. Nix. But, however, maybe, with a pause. Whatever word follows your tendency to use one of those three is the next sentence. Don't risk offending them and negating that work. You worked so hard to put this response, this technique into play, negate it with butter, however. Just nix them. Sense? Mhm. How about, this can get a bit challenging. Tony has an awesome question, and Claire happens to think her question has a little more importance and validity and pipes in as Tony's answering his. Have you had that happen? You fired questions from different angles at the same time? How do you handle that?
Like, I'll take yours first and then let me come back and get yours in a second.
Bingo. Whomever speaks up first is who you'll answer first. The tough part is managing that without getting those behaviors that we talk about. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Point, hand goes up, whatever it is. Avoid the body language that would show you're defensive and just manage that with your words. Claire, I'll take Tony's, see, I have to stand myself. Claire, I'll take Tony's question first, I'll be back for yours. Tony, you were asking? Tony continues to answer his question, I check back in with, I answer to all, and then I check back in with Claire. Claire, you had a question. That simple. But be cautious of this hand that's closest to the interrupter. Our tendency is to put that hand up to stop. You don't want to offend your listener in that way. Questions about the ARC method, how it gets used, or other scenarios in Q&A that we may not have talked about. Katie?
So, especially in conference calls, you'll ask for questions and it's crickets.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, like, you think probably people do have questions, maybe they're too scared.
Yes,
How do you solicit questions on the conference call when you can't see people?
yes.
Or what do, you just, what do you say, bypass the Q&A, or how do you deal with that?
Don't bypass Q&A by any means. Keep working at it to get that interaction happening. A few different techniques going back to conference calls. That's what that rule of engagement's all about. I'm going to be checking in, talking about the price structure and the compressed margin. Have a couple key questions ready for me. We'll get there around 1:20. I'll be interested in hearing your perspective on that. the end of the call, we'll be opening it up for general questions.
So hopefully people know to be ready.
Yeah, it gives people the cue that you really are going to be asking for that interaction. You can also plant that questioner, get some conversation going, and call people right out if you want, as long as you feel safe doing it. Something on the order of, Casey, I know that you just had a big issue with the compressed margin with ABC Company. How did you handle that? Can you give us some perspective here? Call someone else in.
Okay, what if you're in front of a room of 20 people that you don't know, and I just did my flower training and no one's asking any questions?
Then you ask an open-ended question that is not yes or no.
Okay.
An open-ended question. You just had the flower slide up showing there 3 different options. What questions do you have? Silence the crickets. You have one person sitting close to the front. Do you know their names or no?
No.
All right, make eye connection. This person happens to be Hannah. How, of the 3, which do you see yourself using the most of? And then you just maintain eye connection, saying, in silence, I'm waiting for your response. A specific question.
Okay.
If you want to dial that heat back a bit,
Okay, I feel like that person
show of
is
hands.
shooting.
Yeah, you're in Texas.
Here we go, let's try this one, try this. Show of hands, who thinks they will use, I'm just gonna call them flower A, B, and C. Who thinks they'll use flower A the most? Show of hands. B? Show of hands. And what about C? Show of hands. Why C?
Okay. Yeah.
See what happens?
Yeah.
Now there's some conversation going on in the room, and other people will follow C.
Okay.
Claire might start talking about C, and Lindsay says, I don't know, I see more value in A.
Okay, awesome.
Got it?
Yeah.
Open-ended questions will always, always prompt some conversation. Open-ended doesn't just mean, what questions do you have? It may also be, where do you see the biggest value? How do you see yourself implementing this? Of these 3 options, which could you implement the quickest? All of those are open-ended that prompt conversation. Other questions around Q&A? Should we try it? Nicole's so on to me.
She's waiting for
She's
someone
like,
to
here we
ask.
go. The main thing with that crickets is be willing to wait.
Yeah. 'Cause it's awkward.
Yes.
And then
And
everyone else
it can be really
everyone
awkward.
else
all the
awkward, so
silence,
then
and
it's
it's just someone wants to
Get all sweaty.
It can happen. I love Stacy's line. I've stolen it from her. This is done best out loud. And then everyone chuckles, and there's some comic relief in the room, and someone inevitably pipes up with a question. It works every time.
Well, and sometimes it just takes a while to think of
Let it all
something that
sink in.
really, truly.
So you don't look like you're
are
digging.
curious about.
Well, because people don't
Right.
want to sound like.
Right, you don't wanna ask a question and they go, shoot, they covered
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
My bad.
Let's talk about some of those behaviors that happen in the room, whether Q&A or even otherwise in your conversation. Let's take a minute and discuss some of these. What kind of things can happen in the room that can be really, really distracting and tough to manage?
People start having like sidebars about the answer to a question, or especially if you're in a group of more knowledgeable people than you are on the subject. They'll just like run the room. Or people, yeah, just even like whispering or having their own conversation that you can hear is distracting.
Sidebar conversations, technology, texting.
I think when I ask a question, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's been said already, but, when I ask a question, like, everyone's eyes goes to the information and they're just like doing this, like trying to find an answer, but they really just don't want to answer, so they're just like,
They're trying to just
you know what I mean?
look,
Like,
trying to
they're
look
just like
busy.
looking through papers and making all this noise and no one's, everyone's just
Actually
like
saying
pretending that they're looking for an answer.
That's for, during Q&A specifically, right? You put out a question or opened it up for questions. What questions do you have? Go ahead and look really busy so she doesn't.
Exactly.
Easy management tool here. Specifically, how do you see this impacting you in the next 30 days? Kiara, thoughts around that? That's it.
That's why you said don't call people out.
No, you can call people out in certain situations.
Okay.
I just say exercise caution.
Okay.
If you don't know them well, and you don't know if it would or would not be received well, avoid it. If you're on a team or in a group dynamic and you know that that person has some knowledge, you wouldn't be throwing them under the bus in terms of, I don't know, like a quiz show. You don't wanna do that. But if you know they've got some knowledge around the topic, they've worked with different buyers or clients and run into this issue, you know they've got something to offer, by all means, call them by name.
I've had issues with
Other
like the
distracting behaviors in the room.
presentation not working or computer not working. I don't know.
Mhm. What do your listeners do? What happens in the room that's really hard to overcome and stay focused?
Going in and out.
Mhm. Packing their stuff up, gotta catch a flight, everyone else is staying put, but they have to leave early, so there's that noise going on. How do you handle that? What else?
I think this is a general nose thing, but like towards the end of the meeting, like people will hound outside of the door waiting for you to exit so that they can get the conference room. But your meeting's not over, they're just early or something, whatever it is.
Yes,
And
that's some of
kinda
that
annoying because,
competition.
like, everyone's in my group starts to get their watch, trying to see if we had the road and we're on time, and they're just not focusing anymore on like,
Okay.
They do that down in Arkansas,
Yes.
because they have to start their conference call right at 10 a.m. Well, 10:05, so.
What else? What else happens inside the room, either during your talk or during Q&A when you're trying to wrap, that's really, really distracting? You ever have a person in the room who's know-it-all?
Hermione.
Open it up for questions, and that person seizes the opportunity to say everything? The hijacker? Ever run into that? No? You don't run into the hijacker?
Got one on my team.
I have one on my NLO team that
So you do run into that.
oh, consistently, they're horrible.
What would you call it? Categorize it for me.
Hijackers are pretty good at it. They're just very self-important.
Probably don't wanna call them a hijacker.
It's a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge and wanna,
They're
they
ego
have good
tripping.
intentions, but I think that they just wanna run every conversation
Mm-hmm.
They're
because they know so much.
Yes.
controlling or they're ego tripping, is what it seems like.
Some people just want so badly to be heard. They feel like they have something to contribute. They start by contributing, and they just love to hear all their information, that they knew the answer, and they're smart and well-versed. They just like to hear themselves talk, and they hijack your conversation. Let's talk about that. Let's maneuver through that. How do you handle that? I'm really trying to manage my talk, have a good conversation going. I'm getting some really great feedback from the room, and Nicole takes over. What do I do?
I don't know, it's awkward because it's usually someone who's like senior to you by a
Yeah.
lot, and you're
I
like,
think it depends on the person, yeah, if it's someone who's not where you're gonna get a big glare slap on the wrist by politely cutting them off and saying, that's a really great discussion, let's table that for another time. Right now, we're on a constrained schedule and need to get to X, Y, and Z.
There you go. That's a perfect management tool. Honestly, depending on the language, that can be used with just about anyone, perhaps even your decision maker, if you can remain unflappable and do it with grace. Nicole, you're my decision maker and you've been hijacking. Something like this. So many valid points around this topic, Nicole. Do you think this may require a follow-up conference call or meeting?
that's good.
So simple. It's a way to regain control.
Another one of these.
Yeah, like,
But what's
you know?
great is you're acknowledging that that's the decision maker and saying, would you like us to call another meeting? So you're respecting that
Uh-huh.
hierarchical element, saying, should I put together another meeting on this? Does it require some extra time? Now, jumps back in, it starts growing legs again. Out of respect for everyone's time, I'd like to just stay on agenda. Nicole, will you follow up with me after? It sounds like we have to decide whether or not we should schedule another follow-up meeting or if email follow-up would be enough. There, you can manage that, just staying really calm in the moment, being really respectful in the moment, but asking for that control back in a really respectful way.
I think another tactic with like SEMs that might be helpful would be saying
Could
priority-wise.
you speak just a
Yeah.
little bit louder for me,
So,
Kaya, so I can hear
A
you?
lot of our SCMs, so our senior customer managers, they tend to hijack because they have so much going on their minds. Whatever is top of mind for them just feeds into a
Mhm.
meeting. So I know that on our team, we use this a lot of, is this a priority that we need to make a decision on now with this new topic? And we need to table our agenda and address this? Or can we table this and set up another 30 minutes for tomorrow and finish
Right.
the agenda? And put it in
Driving
their
that
report and say,
decision on the fly.
You tell us. do
We have
need
this
to
much
do
time.
this in
Yes.
30 minutes, or do we do it a different time?
I love that technique. We only have 30 minutes left on the agenda. This topic seems weighty. Should we spend the rest of our time on this topic or stick with the agenda and create a follow-up meeting? Then you're putting it in your decision maker's lap. I like that very much. Well done. What about technology? You are really into your conversation, you want to be really, really impactful, and I cannot keep Tony off his phone or his computer to save my life. Tony's up here. Have you ever had that? Where someone goes on their computer during your conversation where you're facilitating a talk? How do you handle that? Just go close it?
Yeah.
Just walk over and close it? I'm sure Tony would love that. Here's most of these. Sidebar conversations, technology, hijacker we talked about. Sidebar conversations and technology really can be handled in the same way. Find that temperature gauge that we keep talking about, find what works. First, very low on the dial, movement toward that area. If Nicole is over here just texting away, I've completely lost her. Simply by moving toward her and doing an arc and park and landing here, using her, the side of her head as my eyes to guide me over, usually that's enough where the person feels it and puts their technology down and re-engages. Now what if she didn't catch on? Or what if it's not right here? What if it was Hannah, who's further away? She can't really feel if I'm looking at her, or Nicole stays on that phone or stays on that computer. What next?
How do you?
What might be up a
How
notch?
do you verbally address that without being passive aggressive?
Here's how. Only verbally address it if it's disruptive to the other people around them.
Right.
If you are the only one who's picked up on the fact that someone's on their computer or their phone, and it doesn't seem to be a disruption for the people around them, try a couple of these lower dial techniques. If it doesn't work, let it go. Now, if Hannah's on her computer and the key tapping is driving Nicole crazy, I can tell Derek is thinking, would you please close that thing? I'm feeling really uncomfortable trying to listen, I can't focus. Then some sort of intervention is going to have to happen. How you package that is really key. Here's where those defensive behaviors will have a tendency to creep out, because you might be feeling a bit disrespected or offended by it. Try something like this. Hannah, if you have something really pressing, may I invite you to take the computer out and handle those emails outside? The keystrokes are distracting to the people around you. That's pretty high on the dial. The
Yeah.
verbal acknowledgement's pretty high. You have to intervene if the other people can't focus and aren't comfortable doing it. Once you've got that wrapped up, please come back. I don't want you to miss anything. It can be that simple. Just have to really watch what happens. All those defensive behaviors that we're talking about, that you can see and hear, to manage those and remain unflappable during that interaction.
What if it's someone really wants to?
Then it becomes a judgment call. Can you get away with it and do it with grace? Someone really senior or a decision maker treading on pretty touchy ground. You may just have to move on and really put the focus in every other listener in the room, giving them even more attention than you were prior. Another coping mechanism, if it's the decision maker and you just have decided this would be way off the charts to say anything, your skills have to amp up. Because now you've got that competition. Remember this morning, with the competition that Mary Beth was talking about, that might be it. There may not be a way you can eliminate it. That means your volume goes up, gestures get bigger, you connect with the eyes of the others in the room, pauses get longer, all of those skills that you know grab and keep attention, that's where you go to.
Is it appropriate to ask for interaction from them? So say it's your buyer and they are checking their phone, they're on the computer. Is it appropriate to do like a midpoint check-in and say, hey, Scott, how are you feeling about this?
Absolutely.
To be like,
It can be as simple as, that's your buyer, thoughts so far, Scott, checking in. That's it. Chances are they'll look up and give you that attention. That's, again, on that dial. Will that fly, your KNOW? You know that listener better than anyone else. It's your job to have that KNOW in your head. Will that fly with Scott? Or do you run the risk of offending your buyer? You have to decide that on the fly. We talked about the hijacker. People going in and out and leaving the room. What's the best thing to do there? You handle that. Right, all those noises that go along, someone's going to catch their flight. It happens, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you handle that? Pardon me?
Talk louder.
You can talk louder, you can compete with it, or simply pause and acknowledge. Nicole has a flight to catch. Nicole, thank you for being here. Let's all say goodbye to Nicole. Just pause as,
make
Thank
it
you
look
for
like
being
an
here.
emotional break that
Stop
you're.
zipping your bag.
just acknowledge it, just own it. If it's that disruptive, just own it and say goodbye, thanks for being here, pause as she leaves, re-engage. If it's really, really obvious, if it's subtle, you can get by just with continuing your talk or just pausing through it. Just pausing through it, give her a chance to do what she needs to do. She stands to leave. Thanks, Nicole, safe travels, back on track. Now, if it's premature, that person's just rifling around, they really don't have to leave for probably another 15 minutes, they're just looking for something to do to be really efficient, so they're ready at straight up 3 o'clock, then you can say, I promise I will have you out of here on time. I want to make sure you don't miss anything. Stay with me.
Teachers do that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What did you say?
Teachers.
Professors.
Professors
Oh.
would do that
Yeah.
constantly.
I'll give you 5 minutes.
I'll give you plenty of time to wrap at the end. Stay with me. I don't want you to miss these last few minutes. They're really key.
Is that something you would say to the whole group, or would you want whole person?
No, I'd say it. I would just say it up here. Because it's sort of that elephant in the room thing. The reason it's being brought to your attention is because it's become an audible distraction. If it's distracting to me as the speaker, it's probably distracting to the others around. We may as well now just acknowledge it. Either a goodbye if it really is time to leave, or hang with me. I don't want you to miss anything. I'll give you plenty of time to pack up at the end. All right? Let's try some of these on. We'll open it up for questions you have, and then work with ARC if it's challenging, practicing the staying open, answer to all, and then some lucky participants will get thrown some of these distracting behaviors, and we'll practice managing those. Here's how we'll do it. Your quick start. You thought you were done with that, right? Bring it back out if you need it. You're going to deliver your close. Opinion, action, benefits, and then you'll open it up for questions. And how do we do that?
What questions?
What questions do you have? Open-ended. Everyone's prepared questions for you. We won't have a problem with the silence unless it happens to be one of those distracting behaviors we choose to have you work around. Throw you some questions and give you a chance to practice all of those skills that I showed you on how to manage those questions. If it's challenging, what do we use? ARC. Exactly. And then we'll draw your name out of a hat to see who the lucky participant is that gets to leave the room, and we'll plant a distracting behavior. Sound good? All right, let's do it. everybody will be taped on this one. Whomever is feeling inspired by this powerful module, jump to your feet first. Don't race. Who's first?
I'll go.
All right, Nicole. Claire, sorry.
Go ahead, Nicole.
I think I just voluntold, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, no.
Wait, sitting or standing?
Let's try this one on our feet.
So just starting with the closing opinion.
Yep, we'll deliver your close just like you did earlier today and then open it up for questions. You are her listeners, so everyone have that list of questions ready for Claire.
It is imperative that we get these 3 items in the set before New Year's resolutions happen.
Relax those hands.
Let's get these in by November 20th so they are ready to ship by 12/30. The value price point, the meeting of consumer demands, and the quality merch support that surround these products will make them a huge hit come January. Are there any questions that you have?
What questions do you have?
What questions do you have?
Have you made any improvements to your distribution to support the increased demand that we'll see in January?
So these 3 products are
More
our
so.
first. These 3 Fiber One meal bars are our first move into the pharmacy set. So these will need to be incremental for General Mills ourselves, but we don't see any cannibalization on our existing Fiber One bars.
And are we going to answer that? Include others in your answer.
So we do not see any cannibalization to current Fiber One meal bars, and there are some underperforming SKUs that we could take out of your current set that will help you succeed moving forward.
And she checked back in with Katie. How did you feel as the questioner, Katie? Did you get the answer and the closure you needed? Mhm. Let's take it again just from the benefit.